What would you do if nobody was watching and $5,000 could change your life overnight? At 11:48 p.m., the 22nd floor of Reed Tower was almost completely silent. The usual buzz of conversations, ringing phones, and clicking keyboards had disappeared hours ago. Only the soft hum of air conditioning remained, drifting through the vast executive offices like a distant whisper. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Chicago, where thousands of lights sparkled against the dark sky. To most people, the view would have been breathtaking. Hannah Collins barely noticed it anymore. She pushed a cleaning cart slowly across the polished floor, her shoulders aching after nearly 14 hours of work. A loose strand of light brown hair had escaped her ponytail hours earlier. Her uniform showed faint traces of dust despite her constant efforts to stay neat. She was exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that settled deep into your bones and followed you home. But she still had 3 offices left before she could clock out. Hannah paused beside a large conference room and glanced at the time on her phone. 11:48. If she finished quickly, she might get home before 1 in the morning. She let out a quiet sigh. Tomorrow would begin again at 6. The thought made her smile sadly. Some people dreamed about vacations. Hannah dreamed about sleep. She grabbed her cleaning supplies and stepped into the executive conference room. The space was enormous. A glossy walnut table stretched nearly 30 feet from end to end. Leather chairs surrounded it. Digital screens covered one wall. Everything gleamed beneath the recessed lighting. Hannah moved automatically through her routine. Empty trash bins, wipe surfaces, vacuum carpet. Repeat. The rhythm was familiar, comforting even. Her mind wandered toward the growing stack of bills waiting on her kitchen table. Rent was due in 10 days. Her father's latest medical expenses sat unopened because she already knew what they contained. More numbers, more stress, more reminders that she was constantly one emergency away from falling behind. She pushed the thoughts aside and bent down to pick up a forgotten notepad beneath the table. That was when she noticed it. A large white envelope resting beneath one of the executive chairs. Hannah frowned. She almost missed it. The envelope looked ordinary except for one thing. It was thick, very thick. Curious, she picked it up. No name, no label, no markings, just a plain sealed envelope. She should have taken it directly to security without opening it. That would have been the professional thing to do. Yet the unexpected weight made her hesitate. Slowly, she lifted one corner and looked inside. Her breath caught instantly. Cash. Neatly stacked bills filled the envelope. Hannah stared in disbelief. She quickly looked around the empty conference room as if someone might suddenly appear and explain what she was seeing. Nobody did. The room remained silent. Carefully, she counted the visible bundles without removing them. $5,000. Maybe more. Her heart began pounding. $5,000. The number echoed through her mind. $5,000 could pay months of medical expenses. $5,000 could fix her aging car before winter. $5,000 could erase the anxiety that followed her every waking hour. For a long moment, Hannah simply stood there holding the envelope. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass. The building remained completely empty. No cameras were visible inside the room. No witnesses. No one knew she had found it. The temptation lasted only a few seconds. But those few seconds felt much longer. Hannah closed her eyes briefly. Then she slipped the envelope into her cleaning cart and headed toward the elevators. Downstairs, the lobby security desk sat beneath bright fluorescent lights. An older security guard named Frank looked up from his monitor as Hannah approached. "Working late again?" he asked with a smile. Hannah placed the envelope on the desk. "Somebody left this upstairs." Frank's expression changed immediately when he opened it. "Good grief." That was my reaction too. He looked at her carefully. "You know how much is in here?" Hannah nodded. "Enough to make somebody panic when they realize it's missing." Frank stared at her for a moment. Then he shook his head with admiration. "Most people would not have brought this down so quickly." Hannah forced a small smile. "It is not mine." The answer sounded simple, because to her it was. Frank secured the envelope and thanked her before logging it into the building records. Hannah wished him good night and returned toward the elevators. She never noticed the man standing quietly across the lobby near a maintenance corridor. Dressed in a dark work jacket and simple work boots, he blended in easily with the night staff. He had watched the entire interaction without interruption. Nathan Reed folded his arms and studied the woman walking away. Most people in his position would have reviewed reports and spreadsheets to judge character. Nathan preferred observation. Real character revealed itself in ordinary moments, especially when nobody thought they were being watched. He glanced toward the envelope, now resting safely behind the security desk, then back toward Hannah. The cleaning woman had no idea that finding the money had not been an accident. She had no idea that someone had intentionally left it there. And she certainly had no idea that the quiet man watching from across the lobby owned the entire building. As Hannah stepped back into the elevator and pressed the button for the 22nd floor, she believed the night was finally returning to normal. She had no way of knowing that a single envelope had just changed the direction of her life forever. Hannah did not get home until nearly 1:30 in the morning. The small apartment she rented on the west side of Chicago was quiet except for the soft ticking of an old kitchen clock. She kicked off her worn shoes near the door and immediately noticed the stack of envelopes waiting on the counter. Bills. There always seemed to be more of them. She rubbed her tired eyes and reached for the top envelope. The amount due made her stomach tighten. Another medical payment. Another reminder that her father's recovery was taking longer than anyone hoped. Hannah glanced toward the hallway. Her father was asleep in the second bedroom. She listened for a moment, hearing only the faint sound of a television left running at low volume. Relief washed over her. At least he was resting. She poured herself a glass of water and sat at the small kitchen table. For a long moment, she stared at the bills without opening the rest. Her thoughts drifted back to the envelope she had found upstairs. $5,000. The number still felt unreal. She imagined what it could have done. Paid several months of rent. Covered prescriptions. Fixed the transmission in her aging sedan before winter weather made everything worse. The possibilities seemed endless. Hannah shook her head and pushed the thought away. The money had never been hers. The answer remained simple no matter how many times life tried to complicate it. Eventually, she crawled into bed and fell asleep almost instantly. 4.5 hours later, her alarm dragged her back into reality. The morning passed in a blur. Coffee, laundry, a quick stop at the pharmacy, a call from her father asking whether she remembered to buy milk. By late afternoon, she was already preparing for another overnight shift. Life moved fast when every hour mattered. Back at Reed Tower, Nathan Reed stood inside a private conference room reviewing a report. The report contained exactly one page. Hannah Collins, age 29, night cleaning staff, no disciplinary issues, excellent attendance, positive references from supervisors. Nathan closed the folder. None of those details interested him nearly as much as what he had witnessed the previous night. Numbers could tell part of a story. Character told the rest. His assistant stood nearby. The envelope was returned exactly as expected, she said. Nathan nodded. And nobody spoke to her afterward? No good. He looked toward the city skyline beyond the glass. Let us keep it that way. The assistant hesitated. You are continuing? Nathan smiled slightly. I am curious. Meanwhile, Hannah arrived at work shortly before 9 that evening. The lobby looked exactly as it always did. Polished floors, bright lights, busy elevators. Nothing appeared different. Yet she noticed Frank, the security guard, smiling the moment she approached. You became popular today, he said. Hannah frowned. What does that mean? Frank leaned back in his chair. The owner's office called about the envelope. Hannah immediately looked uncomfortable. Oh, apparently whoever lost it was extremely grateful. That is good. Frank studied her expression. You really are not interested in a reward, are you? Hannah laughed softly. If they want to thank me, that is nice. But I was just doing my job. Frank shook his head with admiration. Not everyone thinks that way. Hannah smiled politely and headed toward the elevators. She missed the quiet figure standing near a maintenance cart across the lobby. Nathan watched her disappear behind closing elevator doors. Most people became curious after recognition. Most people wanted acknowledgement. Hannah seemed almost embarrassed by the attention. The observation intrigued him even more. Hours later, close to midnight, Hannah worked alone on the 21st floor. The offices were empty except for the glow of computer monitors left in sleep mode. She hummed quietly while emptying trash bins. Her exhaustion remained, but tonight something felt lighter. Perhaps it was knowing she had made the right choice. Perhaps it was simply relief that the envelope belonged back where it belonged. As she turned a corner, she noticed a maintenance worker kneeling beside an open utility panel. He appeared to be repairing something. Dark work jacket, toolbox, quiet demeanor. Hannah had never seen him before. The man glanced up briefly. Evening. Evening. Hannah replied with a friendly smile. He nodded once and returned to his work. The interaction lasted only seconds. Ordinary. Forgettable. Yet neither of them realized it was the beginning of something much larger. Because the quiet maintenance worker was not there by accident. And the woman pushing the cleaning cart had no idea that every choice she made was slowly changing the life of the man observing her from the shadows. The next few nights followed a pattern Hannah barely noticed. She arrived shortly before 9, checked her assignments, and began working her way through the endless maze of offices that filled Reed Tower. The maintenance worker seemed to appear everywhere. Not constantly, just often enough to become familiar. Sometimes she saw him replacing ceiling panels. Sometimes he pushed a toolbox through the hallways. Occasionally he sat alone in a break room drinking coffee from a plain paper cup. Each encounter lasted only a minute or two. Yet somehow she found herself looking forward to them. On Wednesday night, she discovered him struggling with a jammed supply cabinet door. Need help? She asked. The man glanced up. I think I have it. The door refused to move. Hannah smiled. That means no. Before he could object, she set down her cleaning supplies and pulled firmly on the handle while he adjusted the latch. The cabinet popped open immediately. There, she said. Teamwork. A faint smile appeared on his face. Thank you. You are welcome. Hannah returned to work without expecting anything more. She did not realize Nathan watched her disappear around the corner with a mixture of amusement and curiosity. Most people in the building barely acknowledged maintenance staff. Hannah treated everyone exactly the same. The observation stayed with him. A few hours later, she entered a small employee lounge on the 19th floor. Empty soda cans cluttered a table. Coffee cups sat abandoned beside a sink. Someone had left behind half a sandwich wrapped in paper. Hannah sighed softly. Cleaning up after careless people had become a regular part of her job. Yet instead of complaining, she quietly began clearing the mess. That was not your responsibility. The familiar voice came from behind her. Hannah glanced over her shoulder. The maintenance worker stood in the doorway. Neither was leaving it there, she replied. But here we are. Nathan laughed quietly. The sound surprised her. He always seemed serious. You must be very patient, he said. Not really. She tossed an empty cup into the trash. I just do not like leaving problems for someone else. The answer lingered in Nathan's mind long after the conversation ended. The following night, a cold rain swept across Chicago. Wind rattled the windows of the upper floors. Most employees hurried home before the weather worsened. Hannah remained behind as usual. Shortly after midnight, she stopped inside a storage room to retrieve fresh cleaning supplies. While reaching for a box of paper towels, something slipped from her pocket and landed on the floor. A small red notebook. Hannah immediately bent down to grab it. What is that? Nathan asked from the hallway. She hesitated. Nothing important. It looked important. Hannah smiled reluctantly. It is just a notebook. Nathan nodded toward it. May I ask what you write in it? For a moment, she seemed embarrassed. Then she handed it to him. Only if you promise not to laugh. Nathan opened the notebook carefully. The pages were filled with handwritten notes. Business ideas. Budget calculations. Equipment costs. Marketing plans. Customer lists. Every page contained detailed observations and goals. Across the first page, written neatly in blue ink, were 3 words. Collins Cleaning Services. Nathan looked up. This is yours. Hannah nodded. Someday. He flipped through several pages. You have been working on this a long time. Almost 3 years. Her voice softened. Every extra dollar I save goes into a separate account. Nathan studied the notebook again. There was nothing childish about it. Nothing unrealistic. It was thoughtful, organized, ambitious. You want to start your own company. Hannah smiled. That is the dream. Why cleaning services? She looked around the empty storage room. Because I understand this work. Her fingers brushed the edge of the notebook. People overlook it. They think it is simple. But every business depends on people willing to do the jobs nobody notices. Nathan closed the notebook slowly. That is a good answer. Hannah laughed. Most people think it is boring. Most people are wrong. Their eyes met briefly. Something unexpected passed between them. Respect. Understanding. Perhaps both. Hannah accepted the notebook and tucked it safely back into her pocket. Anyway, dreams are free. Nathan glanced toward the notebook. Not all dreams stay dreams. Hannah smiled politely, but she clearly did not believe him. Years of financial pressure had taught her to be realistic. Nathan watched her wheel the cleaning cart out of the room and disappear down the hallway. Then he looked toward the rain streaking the windows beyond the glass. The red notebook remained fresh in his memory. Colin's cleaning services. For the first time since beginning his quiet observations, Nathan found himself thinking beyond simple curiosity. Because the woman he had been watching was not only honest. She was building something. And whether she realized it or not, someone was paying very close attention. Over the next week, Nathan found himself paying attention to details he normally would have ignored. Board meetings continued. Investment reports arrived. Executives requested decisions worth millions of dollars. Yet somehow he kept thinking about a red notebook carried by a cleaning woman working night shifts on the 22nd floor. It made little sense. Nathan had spent most of his adult life evaluating businesses. He understood numbers, projections, and risk assessments. What intrigued him now was not a business plan. It was the person behind it. Late Thursday evening, Hannah arrived at work carrying a small paper bag from a grocery store. The weather had turned colder, and a sharp wind swept through downtown Chicago. She stopped in the employee break room before beginning her shift. As she entered, she noticed an older janitor named Walter sitting alone at a table. Walter was in his 60s and usually greeted everyone with a smile. Tonight he looked unusually tired. Hannah set down her bag. "Everything okay?" Walter forced a smile. "Just a long day." She sat across from him. "You look like you skipped dinner." Walter laughed quietly. "You are more observant than you should be." Hannah opened her paper bag and removed a sandwich. Then another. "Good thing I made two." Walter immediately shook his head. No, keep it." "Walter." She slid the sandwich across the table. "I am not asking." The older man hesitated before accepting it. Gratitude filled his eyes. "Thank you." Hannah smiled. "You can repay me by not working yourself to death." Neither of them noticed the maintenance worker standing briefly outside the room before continuing down the hallway. Nathan had witnessed the entire exchange. Once again, Hannah had done something kind when she believed nobody was watching. The gesture was small. Most people would forget it within minutes. Nathan did not. Later that night, Hannah discovered a spilled cup of coffee outside a row of executive offices. The stain stretched across expensive carpeting. She checked her assignment sheet. The area technically belonged to another cleaning crew scheduled for the following morning. Hannah stared at the mess for several seconds. Then she quietly gathered supplies and cleaned it herself. The task delayed her nearly 30 minutes. Nobody thanked her. Nobody even knew she had done it. She simply could not leave it there. Near midnight, she found Nathan replacing a light fixture in a hallway. At least that was what she assumed he was doing. "You always work this late?" she asked. Nathan glanced down from the ladder. "Most nights." Hannah laughed softly. "Then we are both making bad life choices." A smile appeared on his face. That is one way to describe it. She continued organizing supplies nearby. "You know, most people spend their evenings relaxing." "And what do you do?" Nathan asked. Hannah pointed toward the cleaning cart. "Apparently this." The conversation felt easy now. Familiar. Neither one rushed it. "What would you do if you did not have to work nights?" Nathan asked. Hannah considered the question. "Sleep for about a week." He laughed. "After that?" Her expression softened. "I would work on my company." Nathan nodded. "The cleaning business." "Exactly." She leaned against the cart. "Not because I want to get rich." "Then why?" Hannah looked down the quiet hallway. "Because I want control over my future." Her voice grew thoughtful. "I am tired of feeling one bill away from disaster." Nathan listened carefully. Hannah continued. "I want to hire people who get overlooked. Single parents. Older workers. People who need a chance." She shrugged. "Maybe that sounds unrealistic." "It does not," Nathan said quietly. For a moment neither spoke. Then Hannah smiled. "Good. Because it is probably going to happen someday." Nathan watched her wheel the cart away. Confidence. That was what struck him. Not arrogance. Confidence earned through hard work. The kind that survived disappointment. Later that night, after Hannah left for home, Nathan sat alone in his private office at the top of the building. The city lights stretched for miles beyond the windows. On his desk sat reports involving billion-dollar projects. Yet his attention remained elsewhere. He opened a notebook and wrote down 3 words. Colin's Cleaning Services. Then he added a second note beneath it. Honest. Reliable. Vision. Nathan stared at the page for a long moment. He had started this quiet experiment expecting to test character. What he had discovered instead was someone steadily proving her value through actions nobody else noticed. And with each passing day, the line between curiosity and admiration was becoming harder to see. The first snowfall of the season arrived on a Monday night. Large flakes drifted past the windows of Reed Tower, transforming the city beyond into a blur of white lights and shadows. Most employees left early to avoid the weather. By 10 o'clock, only security staff, maintenance crews, and a handful of overnight workers remained inside the building. Hannah stood near the 22nd floor windows for a moment, watching the snow accumulate on rooftops below. Beautiful, is it not? Nathan's voice came from behind her. She turned and smiled. Beautiful when you do not have to drive through it. He laughed softly. Fair point. Hannah returned to her work, but Nathan noticed she seemed distracted. The usual energy in her movements had faded. Long day, he asked. Hannah hesitated. Something like that. Normally, she brushed off personal questions. Tonight, she looked tired enough to answer honestly. My car stopped running again this morning. Nathan frowned. Serious problem? The mechanic thinks so. She forced a smile. Apparently, old cars eventually decide they have suffered enough. Nathan leaned against the wall nearby. Can it be repaired? Hannah sighed. Probably. Everything can be repaired if you have enough money. The words carried no bitterness. Just exhaustion. I will figure it out. Nathan studied her carefully. That sentence seemed to define her entire life. I will figure it out. No complaints. No self-pity. Just determination. You always say that, he observed. Hannah looked up. Say what? I will figure it out. A small laugh escaped her. Because I usually have to. The answer stayed with him long after the conversation ended. Around midnight, Hannah stopped in the employee break room. She opened her red notebook and began reviewing figures written across several pages. Equipment costs, insurance estimates, business licenses, marketing expenses. The numbers looked intimidating. She stared at them anyway. Every dream became less frightening when broken into smaller pieces. Nathan entered a few minutes later carrying 2 cups of coffee. He placed one beside her without a word. Hannah looked surprised. You did not have to do that. Probably not. He sat across from her. But I wanted coffee too, and drinking it alone seemed inefficient. Hannah laughed. That might be the strangest reason anyone has ever given me. I have many strange qualities. I am starting to notice. They shared a quiet moment. Snow tapped gently against the windows. The building felt almost peaceful. Nathan glanced toward the notebook. How is the future cleaning empire? Hannah smiled. Still very small. Every large company starts small. That sounds like something written on an inspirational poster. Nathan laughed. Maybe. Hannah flipped through a few pages. Honestly, sometimes I think I am crazy. Why? Because the numbers never seem to work. She pointed toward a page filled with calculations. Every time I get close to a savings goal, something happens. Her smile faded slightly. Medical bills. Car repairs. Rent increases. Nathan listened quietly. Life has excellent timing. Terrible timing, Hannah corrected. Terrible timing would be more accurate. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Nathan asked a simple question. Why keep trying? Hannah looked down at the notebook. Her fingers brushed the cover gently. Because if I stop trying, then this becomes my entire future. She gestured toward the empty offices surrounding them. And there is nothing wrong with cleaning buildings. Honest work matters. Her voice softened. But I want to build something of my own. Nathan nodded slowly. That is a good reason. Hannah closed the notebook. My father always says people survive hard times by giving themselves something to look forward to. She smiled faintly. This is mine. The answer affected Nathan more than he expected. He had spent years surrounded by people chasing larger salaries, bigger titles, and greater influence. Hannah was chasing something different. Independence. Purpose. A future she could create with her own hands. The distinction mattered. Later that night, after Hannah returned to work, Nathan remained alone in the break room. His phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from executives waiting for decisions. He ignored them for a few minutes longer than usual. Instead, he looked at the chair where Hannah had been sitting. Then he glanced toward the snow-covered city beyond the windows. Somewhere along the way, this experiment had changed. He was no longer evaluating her character. That question had already been answered. Now he found himself wanting to help. Not because she needed rescuing. Not because he felt sorry for her. Because he genuinely believed in what she was trying to build. And for the first time since meeting her, Nathan began considering a possibility he had not allowed himself to entertain before. What if the most valuable thing he discovered inside Reed Tower was not a future employee, a business idea, or the outcome of a test? What if it was Hannah Collins herself? The reveal happened on a Friday night. Hannah almost skipped work that evening. Her car was still unreliable. The weather forecast promised freezing rain, and exhaustion had settled into every muscle she possessed. But responsibilities did not disappear simply because someone felt tired. By 9 o'clock, she was pushing her cleaning cart through the familiar lobby of Reed Tower. Something immediately felt different. Security guards stood straighter than usual. Additional staff moved through the building carrying clipboards and headsets. Fresh floral arrangements decorated the reception area. "What is going on?" Hannah asked Frank as she signed in. The older guard smiled. "Big company event tomorrow." "On a Saturday?" Apparently important people never stop working. Hannah laughed softly and headed toward the elevators. She expected a normal shift. Instead, small surprises appeared everywhere. Executive assistants hurried through hallways carrying documents. Conference rooms were being prepared. Catering staff delivered supplies. The entire building seemed unusually alive for a Friday night. Around 10:30, she saw Nathan near the 21st floor elevators. He wore the same maintenance uniform as always. Yet something about him seemed distracted. "Busy night?" she asked. Nathan smiled. "You could say that." Hannah tilted her head. "You look nervous." The observation caught him off guard. "Do I?" "A little." She shrugged. "Not that I am an expert." Nathan laughed quietly. "Maybe tomorrow is an important day." Hannah nodded toward his toolbox. "Well, good luck fixing whatever crisis caused all this." For a brief moment, Nathan looked like he wanted to say something more. Instead, he simply nodded. "Thank you, Hannah." The way he said her name felt different somehow. More deliberate. More meaningful. She noticed it, but could not explain why. The rest of the night passed quickly. Just after midnight, Hannah finished her assignments and prepared to leave. As she crossed the lobby, an announcement appeared on several digital screens. Mandatory employee gathering. Saturday, 10 a.m., main auditorium. All staff invited. Hannah frowned. She rarely attended company meetings. Cleaning crews usually worked around them. Yet something about the message suggested this one mattered. The following morning, she arrived tired but curious. The main auditorium occupied nearly an entire floor of Reed Tower. Hundreds of employees filled the seats. Executives, assistants, accountants, maintenance workers, security guards, and cleaning staff sat together for perhaps the first time all year. Hannah found a seat near the back beside Walter. "Any idea what this is about?" she whispered. Walter shook his head. "No clue." The room buzzed with speculation. Then the lights dimmed. Conversations faded. A company executive stepped onto the stage. "Good morning, everyone." Applause echoed politely. Hannah listened with half attention until she heard a name she recognized. "Today we are honored to welcome the founder and owner of Reed Holdings." The room erupted into louder applause. Hannah glanced toward the stage. The executive smiled broadly. "Please join me in welcoming Mr. Nathan Reed." For a second, Hannah did not understand what she was seeing. A man walked onto the stage. Confident, composed, dressed in an elegant dark suit. The auditorium stood in applause. Hannah stared in disbelief. Her heart seemed to stop completely. Nathan, the maintenance worker. The man who drank coffee with her in break rooms. The man who listened to her dreams. The man who carried a toolbox through hallways. Nathan Reed, owner of the building, founder of the company, millionaire businessman. The realization crashed into her all at once. Around her, employees continued applauding. Hannah barely heard them. Memories replayed rapidly inside her mind. The envelope, the questions, the observations, the timing. Every conversation suddenly looked different. Every coincidence suddenly made sense. Nathan stepped toward the podium. His eyes moved across the audience. Then they found hers. The moment lasted only a second. Long enough for him to know she understood the truth. Long enough for Hannah to feel something break inside her chest. Shock, confusion, betrayal. She remembered telling him about her financial struggles, about her father, about her fears, all while he concealed who he really was. Nathan began speaking about the future of the company. Hannah could not hear a single word. Her pulse pounded too loudly. She looked around the auditorium. Everyone admired him, respected him, knew exactly who he was. Everyone except her. Slowly, she rose from her seat. Walter glanced at her in surprise. Hannah barely noticed. She turned and walked toward the exit. On stage, Nathan's voice faltered for the first time all morning. Because the one person whose opinion mattered most was leaving the room. And for the first time since this began, he realized the test had never truly been about Hannah at all. The cold air outside Reed Tower hit Hannah the moment she stepped onto the sidewalk. She barely noticed it. Her thoughts were moving too fast. Cars passed through downtown Chicago. People crossed intersections carrying coffee cups and shopping bags. The city continued exactly as it had an hour ago, yet somehow everything felt different. Nathan Reed. The name repeated itself again and again inside her mind. Not a maintenance worker. Not an overnight employee. Not the quiet man who shared coffee and listened to her talk about impossible dreams. He owned the building, the company, the entire empire surrounding her. By the time Hannah reached home, anger had begun replacing shock. She sat at her kitchen table staring at the red notebook lying beside a stack of unpaid bills. For weeks, she had trusted him. She had spoken honestly, shared details about her father, her finances, and her future. Meanwhile, he had known exactly who he was and exactly who she was. The imbalance suddenly felt impossible to ignore. Her phone buzzed once. Then again. Nathan. Hannah stared at the screen. She let it ring until the call ended. A text appeared moments later. Please let me explain. She placed the phone face down without responding. The following Monday, she returned to work because she needed the paycheck. Not because she wanted to be there. The building felt unfamiliar now. Every hallway reminded her of conversations that suddenly seemed different. Every elevator ride brought back memories she no longer knew how to interpret. Around 10 o'clock that evening, she entered a supply room and found Nathan waiting near the shelves. He was dressed in a suit this time. No maintenance uniform. No disguise. Just the man he truly was. Hannah immediately turned to leave. Please, Nathan said. 5 minutes. She stopped but did not face him. Why? Because I owe you an explanation. Hannah slowly turned around. An explanation for what exactly? Her voice remained calm, but the disappointment underneath it was impossible to miss. The fact that you lied to me? Nathan took a slow breath. I never lied about who I was as a person. Hannah laughed once. It was not a happy sound. That is convenient. It is true. You let me believe you were a maintenance worker. I let you believe I was someone ordinary. You are not ordinary, Nathan. She folded her arms. You own the building. Silence settled between them. Nathan knew she was right. Hannah continued. Do you know what bothers me most? He waited. It is not the money. Her eyes met his. It is the fact that every conversation now feels like part of a test. The words landed heavily. Nathan looked away for a moment. The envelope was a test. Hannah stared at him. Hearing the admission hurt more than she expected. I knew it. At first, yes. At first, I wanted to see how people behaved when nobody was watching. Hannah shook her head slowly. And I passed. Nathan's expression tightened. That is not how I think about it anymore. But it started that way. He could not deny it. Yes. Hannah looked down at the floor. Suddenly dozens of small moments made sense. The questions. The observations. The timing. I was an experiment. No, Nathan stepped closer. You became much more than that. That is easy to say now. Her voice cracked slightly. Do you have any idea how humiliating this feels? Nathan remained silent. I told you things I have never told anyone. Hannah's eyes glistened. And all along you were standing on completely different ground. Hannah, you had every advantage. Every piece of information. Every choice. She shook her head. I did not even know who I was talking to. The disappointment in her voice hurt more than anger would have. Nathan felt it immediately. I am sorry. The words came quietly. I know that is not enough. Hannah laughed sadly. No, it is not. For several seconds neither spoke. Then Nathan said something unexpected. You were never being evaluated because I thought you were not good enough. Hannah looked at him. Then why? Because somewhere along the way, I stopped trusting people. His voice remained calm. Honest. Success attracts a lot of things. Most of them are not sincerity. He glanced toward her notebook resting on a nearby shelf where she had set it down earlier. You were the first person in years who treated me like a regular human being. Hannah felt her resolve weaken slightly. Not enough, but enough to make this harder. Nathan continued. Everything we talked about was real. Maybe it was real for you. She picked up the notebook. Right now, I do not know what was real for me. Those words ended the conversation. Nathan understood that immediately. Hannah moved toward the door. I need space. He nodded. Okay. Do not try to fix this. Another nod. Okay. She paused briefly before leaving. Part of her wanted to remember the man who brought coffee during snowstorms and listened without judgment. Another part could only see the billionaire who had hidden behind a uniform. The conflict hurt more than she wanted to admit. Without another word, Hannah walked out of the room. Nathan remained standing alone among the shelves long after she disappeared. For the first time since this began, he realized there was no amount of money, influence, or success capable of solving the problem in front of him. If he wanted Hannah to trust him again, he would have to earn it. And this time, there would be no tests. The weeks that followed felt strangely quiet. Nathan kept his promise. No unexpected calls. No messages. No attempts to explain himself again. At first, Hannah expected him to break that promise. People with power usually believe persistence could solve anything. Nathan did not. The silence stretched from days into weeks. Gradually, anger gave way to something more complicated. She missed their conversations. She missed having someone who listened without interrupting. She missed the version of him she thought she knew. That realization frustrated her more than anything else. One snowy evening in early December, Hannah finished her shift and stepped into the lobby. Frank waved her over from the security desk. Package for you. Hannah frowned. For me. Frank pointed toward a large envelope resting on the counter. There was no return address. Only her name written neatly across the front. Hannah immediately felt suspicious. She almost refused to take it. Curiosity won. She carried the envelope home and left it unopened on the kitchen table for nearly an hour. Finally, she sat down and carefully broke the seal. Inside, she found a set of keys, a folded letter, and a photograph. Hannah stared at the photograph first. It showed an old brick warehouse on the west side of Chicago. The building looked worn but sturdy. Confused, she unfolded the letter. The message was short. No gifts, no conditions, no obligations. Just an opportunity, if you choose to see it. Hannah's heart began racing. She looked closer. Attached to the letter was an address. The next afternoon, unable to ignore her curiosity any longer, she drove across the city. The warehouse stood exactly where the photograph indicated. Fresh snow covered the sidewalk. Large windows reflected the gray winter sky. Hannah parked and stepped out of the car. One of the keys fit the front door. Slowly she entered. The sight inside stopped her completely. The warehouse had been transformed. New flooring, fresh paint, modern lighting, office space, storage areas, training rooms. Everything looked ready for business. Hannah moved through the building in disbelief. Then she saw it. Mounted across the far wall was a giant framed display. Enlarged and professionally designed. Collins Cleaning Services. Her business plan. Her notes. Her sketches. Her goals. Every idea from the little red notebook had been carefully turned into a blueprint. Tears immediately filled her eyes. She walked closer. Beneath the display sat a small plaque. It read, "Dreams deserve room to grow." Hannah stood frozen. She understood instantly who had done this. Yet the gesture felt different from anything she expected. Nathan had not offered money. He had not tried to buy forgiveness. He had not asked for anything in return. He had simply created a space where her dream could exist if she chose to pursue it. Footsteps echoed softly behind her. Hannah turned. Nathan stood near the entrance. He wore a dark coat and looked unexpectedly nervous. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Hannah glanced around the building. "You bought this?" Nathan nodded. "Yes." "Why?" He took a slow breath. "Because you were right." Hannah folded her arms. "About what?" "About earning trust." His voice remained calm. "You told me not to fix things. So I am not trying to fix anything." He gestured toward the warehouse. "This is not a reward. It is not an apology. And it does not belong to me anymore." Hannah stared at him. "What does that mean?" Nathan handed her a folder. Inside were legal documents. Ownership papers. Business registration forms. Everything listed under her name. Hannah looked up in shock. "Nathan," he shook his head gently. "You built the dream. I only gave it an address." Silence filled the warehouse. Snow drifted softly outside the windows. Hannah looked around again. For the first time, she could actually see it. Employees. Equipment. Customers. A future that no longer felt impossible. Nathan studied her expression. You once told me people survive hard times by giving themselves something to look forward to. Hannah remembered saying those words. I listened. The simple statement hit harder than any grand speech could have. Because despite everything that happened, one truth remained unchanged. He had listened. From the beginning. Not just to her struggles. To her hopes. To the person she wanted to become. And standing inside the future she had imagined for years, Hannah felt the first real crack appear in the wall she had built around her heart. 6 months later, the sign above the renovated warehouse finally became real. Collins Cleaning Services. Hannah stood on the sidewalk staring at the letters while early morning sunlight reflected across the windows. For a moment she allowed herself to simply enjoy it. No overdue invoices. No impossible calculations. No wondering whether the dream would ever leave the pages of a red notebook. It was here. Real. Alive. The journey had not been easy. The first months were filled with challenges. Equipment orders arrived late. Contracts took longer than expected. Some weeks seemed to create new problems faster than solutions. Yet every obstacle reinforced something Hannah already knew. Building something meaningful required patience. What surprised her most was not the business itself. It was the people. The older workers who finally found stable employment. Single parents grateful for flexible schedules. Individuals who had spent years feeling invisible suddenly becoming part of a team. Watching them succeed brought Hannah more satisfaction than any financial milestone ever could. Meanwhile, Nathan kept his distance exactly as promised. He never used his influence to interfere. He never appeared at the warehouse unexpectedly. He never inserted himself into decisions. Instead, he supported from afar whenever support was genuinely needed and requested. The respect meant more to Hannah than she could explain. Trust returned slowly. Conversation by conversation. Coffee by coffee. Honest moment by honest moment. Eventually, they found themselves laughing together again. Then sharing dinners. Then spending entire evenings discussing everything from business strategies to childhood memories. This time there were no disguises. No secrets. Only truth. One crisp autumn evening, nearly a year after Hannah found the envelope in the conference room, the company celebrated its biggest contract yet. Employees gathered inside the warehouse after work. Music played softly. Food filled long tables. Laughter echoed through the building. Walter stood near the front proudly telling anyone who would listen that he remembered the days when Hannah cleaned offices overnight. Frank from security attended as an honored guest. Even Hannah's father, healthier and stronger than he had been in years, spent the evening smiling beside his daughter. As the celebration continued, Hannah noticed Nathan standing near the large framed blueprint mounted on the wall. The enlarged version of her original notebook remained exactly where it had been placed. She walked over. You are staring at it again. Nathan smiled. I like reminders. Hannah glanced at the blueprint. Of what? Of what determination looks like. For a moment neither spoke. Then Nathan looked around the room. Employees laughed together. Conversations filled the air. A future that once existed only on paper surrounded them. You built all of this, he said quietly. Hannah shook her head. Not alone. No, Nathan smiled. Not alone. The celebration gradually moved outside as evening settled over the city. String lights illuminated the courtyard behind the warehouse. A cool breeze drifted through the air. Hannah stepped away from the crowd for a moment. When she turned around, Nathan was standing behind her. His expression immediately told her something was different. What is it? She asked. Nathan laughed softly. You always know. That is because you become nervous. Do I? Every time. He shook his head with amusement. I should work on that. Hannah smiled. Probably. For a few seconds he simply looked at her. Then his expression grew serious. A year ago, I left an envelope in a conference room because I wanted to know whether honest people still existed. Hannah listened quietly. What I found instead was someone who reminded me who I wanted to be. Emotion tightened her chest. Nathan continued. You changed how I see success. You changed how I see trust. His voice softened. You changed my life. Hannah felt tears forming before she could stop them. Nathan reached into his coat pocket and removed a small velvet box. The sight immediately stole her breath. Around them, the sounds of the celebration faded into the background. There was only the two of them. Nathan opened the box. Inside rested a beautiful ring. Elegant. Simple. Perfect. Hannah Collins, he said quietly. Will you marry me? Tears slipped down her cheeks as she laughed through the emotion. The answer felt obvious. Not because of the company, not because of the success, not because of the warehouse. Because despite every mistake, every misunderstanding, and every obstacle, he had chosen honesty when it mattered most. And because she loved the man standing in front of her. Yes, she whispered. Then she smiled through happy tears. Absolutely yes. Applause erupted moments later as employees realized what had happened. Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger while laughter and cheers filled the courtyard. Months afterward, wedding photographs decorated one wall inside the company headquarters. Beside them hung the original red notebook, preserved inside a glass case. Beneath it rested a small plaque. It read, "Dreams grow when integrity leads the way." Every employee who passed the display knew the story. The cleaning woman who returned $5,000 when nobody was watching. The businessman who learned that character cannot be measured by wealth. And the future they built together. Because sometimes the most important opportunities in life arrive disguised as ordinary moments. And sometimes a simple choice made late at night can change everything forever.